1960 was the year the third secret was going to be revealed. Great expectation, great anticipation of this.
She has said at the very latest it had to be revealed by 1960. And when she was asked why 1960, she said because then it would become more clear.
And we waited, and we waited, and still nothing, and nothing, and nothing.
I remember the feeling. I can only describe it as a kind of spiritual desolation when I learned that the decision had been made and the third secret would not be revealed.
So to dismiss the message of Fatima is to dismiss prophecy as such.
Some of us have figured out what the third secret is. With the help of people who read the secret.
In the year 1917, on a hillside near the village of Fatima in Portugal, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared 6 times in successive months to 3 shepherd children, Lucia de Santos and her cousins Francisco and Jacinto Marto. The Blessed Virgin's message to the children, which was a message to be given to all mankind, was that man must cease offending God, for he is already too much offended, that great punishments will fall upon the world if man does not do penance, and that God wants to establish in the world devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Our Blessed Mother asked at Fatima that the faithful pray the Rosary every day. On October 13, 1917, she performed the great miracle of the sun, witnessed by 70,000 people, which, over a period of about 10 minutes, the people saw the sun dance in the sky, plummet to the earth, and return to its place. Even the anti-Catholic press at the time reported the details of the miracle. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Fatima message is the third part of the Fatima secret, the so-called third secret, which was given on July 13, 1917. The first 2 parts of the secret, Sister Lucy recorded in her memoirs that she wrote in August 1941. The first part described the vision of hell that she and her 2 cousins saw. And the second part of the secret concerned devotion to the Immaculate Heart. Sister Lucy would not write down the third part of the secret, but subsequently gave what appears to be the beginning of it. In December 1941, she wrote, "In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc." The rest of the third secret had yet to be put down on paper.
In June 1943, Sister Lucy became very ill. She became so sick that by September, the Bishop of Fatima was worried that she might die. And he was concerned that she might die and not write down the secret, the third secret. And so he went to her and suggested to her that she write it down so that the secret would be not published at this time, but at least it would be there for the record. Now, Sister Lucy became quite concerned. She felt this was a tremendous responsibility. You see, the bishop had only suggested, and the bishop was not taking responsibility. If she thought it was a good idea, is how he put it, something like that. And so Sister Lucy thought about it and told the bishop, if you give me an order, if you give me a formal written order to write it down, I will obey. But I cannot do this on my own. I cannot take this initiative by myself. So the bishop thought about it for a month and he prayed about it. And so in October, he in fact wrote the formal command to tell her to write down the third part of the secret, or as is known, the third secret. Sister Lucy, as soon as she got the order, immediately set about to obey. And she tried for all of October, the rest of the month, all November and all December to write down the secret. She could not bring herself to put pen to paper to write down the third part of the secret. Finally, on the 2nd of January 1944, in the chapel in Tui, Our Lady appeared to her and told her that indeed it was the will of God that she write down the secret. So Sister Lucy wrote down the secret, and by January the 9th, she wrote to the Bishop of Fatima that I have now completed the task you set out for me to do.
In 1957, just before the envelope containing the third secret was sent from Portugal to the Vatican at the request of the Vatican, Auxiliary Bishop Venancio found himself alone with this envelope. So he held the envelope up to the light to see what was in it. And holding that envelope to the light, he could see that the third secret was on one sheet of paper, and it consisted of about 24 to 25 lines.
Sister Lucy wrote the first part of the secret, The Vision of Hell. In her writing down the first part of the secret, she tells us that she was so frightened, and her cousins also, that they trembled with fear, and that she concludes that she herself would have died of fright had not Our Lady cut the vision short, and had not she been promised to be taken to heaven. So it was a terrifying thing for her to see, and yet she could write it down with apparently relative ease compared to writing down the third secret. And she wrote in the second part of the secret about the annihilation. That is, she used in other parts of her writing or speaking, she said that various nations will disappear from the face of the earth. She understood that the annihilation of nations is something terrible, and she could describe this without very much difficulty. But to write down the third part of the secret, she could not do it for more than 2 months without the intervention of the Blessed Virgin. It must be something terrible.
The 2 envelopes containing the secret were ultimately transferred to the Vatican in 1957. Sister Lucy had written on the outside of each of the envelopes that the secret was to be opened and revealed to the world in 1960.
Canon Barthas writes about his meeting with Sister Lucy in 1946. She was with the Bishop of Fatima, and Canon Barthas asked, when will the third part of the secret, or the third secret, be released? And they both said 1960. He asked, why 1960? And they both replied, because the Blessed Virgin wishes it so. Now in 1955, Cardinal Ottaviani met Sister Lucy on May 17th. After he had been to Fatima, he went to Coimbra. And there he asked Sister Lucy, why 1960? And she answered, because it will be clearer.
In January 1959, Pope John XXIII announced the forthcoming Second Vatican Council. In August of the same year, after having read the secret, he was reported to have said, "The third secret does not concern the years of my pontificate." Thus, 1960 came and went, and despite the Virgin's explicit request, the secret was not revealed, even though the entire Catholic world was awaiting its publication. In February 1960, a high Vatican official made an anonymous report to the press, stating, "It is most likely that the letter in which Sister Lucy wrote down the words of the Virgin, which Our Lady confided as a secret to the 3 little shepherds, in the Covada era will never be opened. It is most probable that the secret of Fatima will remain forever under absolute seal." Cardinal Saragera, the Cardinal Patriarch of Lisbon at the time, expressed his disappointment. "I affirm categorically that I was not consulted on this subject. What I did know of its non-disclosure in 1960, I learned through the papers." Cardinal Saragera, who was Patriarch of Lisbon, held the most exalted place in the Catholic Church in Portugal and was well known for his fervent devotion to the Fatima message. Yet, even though Pope John XXIII had consulted a number of prelates regarding the third secret, it seems Cardinal Saragera was deliberately shut out. This is particularly troubling, since Cardinal Saragera was certainly the most knowledgeable of all the prelates about the details and events at Fatima. Yet the Cardinal learned that the secret would not be released, not from anyone in John XXIII's Vatican, but from the newspapers, just like everyone else. Like the Cardinal, Catholics the world over were stunned and subsequently disillusioned by this development.
We all had this very big in our consciousness, and we knew 1960 was coming. 1960 was the year the third secret was going to be revealed.
The first time I heard of Fatima, I was a Protestant boy in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and the year was 1960. I was a school patrol fellow and walked around with my flag protecting my fellow students, and was chosen to go to Washington, D.C. on a special trip. And I was getting ready, going on the bus, driving in the car with my mother, and heard on the radio that the third secret of Fatima would not be revealed, that the Pope had read it, and it was decided by the officials in the Vatican that it would not be announced to the world.
And we waited, and we waited, and still nothing, and nothing, and nothing. There was an almost audible silence about the thing. People were disillusioned, I think, eventually. We all had a sense that perhaps we'd been had.
In fact, I remember the feeling. I can only describe it as a kind of spiritual desolation when I learned that the decision had been made and the third secret would not be revealed.
What was written in the secret that the whole world was waiting to hear? Was there something to hide? A first clue as to its contents is to be found in the year of its intended publication, 1960.
She has said at the very latest it had to be revealed by 1960. And when she was asked why 1960, she said because then it would become more clear.
That was the decade that changed the face of the world and changed the face of the church. So it's not at all surprising that she chose that year and said that in that year things would be clearer, because in the very short time frame, disasters would happen to the world and to the church, to the families, to our Christian society.
Does the third secret indeed predict disasters throughout the world, and in particular portray a crisis within the church? A crisis of faith? Sister Lucy herself provided a key clue when she wrote the following in her fourth memoir. In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc.
In September of 1952, Pope Pius XII sent a priest named Father Joseph Schweigel to interview Sister Lucy in Portugal on the third secret. This is a specific interrogation about the third secret. And when Father Schweigel came back, here's what he said. He said, "I cannot reveal anything of what I learned at Fatima concerning the third secret, but I can say that it has two parts. One concerns the Pope, the other, logically, although I must say nothing, would have to be the continuation of the words, 'In Portugal, the dogma of faith will always be preserved.'"
When Sister Lucy said that the faith was going to be preserved in Portugal, that implies that the faith is going to be destroyed in most other places. That's the clear implication. And I think we've seen at least one or two generations of young people in which the faith has been totally lost.
And we all knew how the third secret began from Sister Lucy's writing, you know. In Portugal, the dogmas of the faith will always be kept. Obviously, the implication is that outside of Portugal, they might not be kept. You know, it doesn't take a genius to figure this one out. Anybody could figure that one out.
Obviously, any investigation into the true contents of the third secret of Fatima would have to begin with the telltale phrase of the Virgin of Fatima, "In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved," to which Sister Lucy added, "etc." Within that etc. is a world of meaning. Within that etc. we will probably find out what happens to dogma in other parts of the world outside of Portugal. And we will also find out the full contents of the third secret of Fatima. So our investigation has to begin with the question, what is contained in that etc.?
Fatima scholars are in agreement that within the mysterious etc., one will find the words of the Virgin Mary, which predict a great crisis of faith within the Catholic Church, a loss of dogma outside of the nation of Portugal, and an apostasy reaching even the highest levels of the Catholic hierarchy. And this is confirmed by those who have actually read the text of the third secret.
Cardinal Alfredo Ottaviani was prefect of the Holy Office. And at the time, the Holy Office was the preeminent dicastery of the Roman Curia. He was the one who pronounced on orthodoxy and also had the jurisdiction over the final approval or disapproval of apparitions. He stated in an address he gave in 1967 at the Antonianum that the third secret of Fatima is set forth